Elena Marsh had lived her whole life in the small mountain town of Hollow Pine, believing it was an ordinary place. She worked long shifts as a lab technician at the local hospital, drove an old car that rattled on cold mornings, and kept mostly to herself. She had no idea that the dense forest surrounding her town was not empty wilderness, but the guarded territory of one of the oldest and most powerful werewolf packs in the world. That truth found her on a night she would never forget. Her car broke down on a narrow road that wound along the edge of the forest. The engine sputtered, coughed, and died, leaving her stranded in the dark with only the sound of wind moving through the trees. She tried her phone. No signal. She tried the engine again. Nothing. With no other choice, she stepped out into the cold, hoping to find a signal somewhere up the hill. She did not know that the moment her foot touched the soil beyond the road, she had crossed an invisible border. She did not know that unseen eyes, sharp and golden, were already watching her from the trees. Damian Cross was not a man who tolerated intrusions. As the alpha king of the Blackwood Pack, he had spent a decade uniting 7 warring wolf packs under a single rule, ending a bloody era of infighting through strength, discipline, and an iron will that few dared to question. He did not concern himself with humans. Humans were, in his mind, fragile, forgettable, and irrelevant to the world he ruled. He arrived at the border that night expecting to find a lost hiker or a curious trespasser, someone to be quietly turned away before they saw too much. Instead, he found a woman standing perfectly still in the moonlight, her breath fogging in the cold air, looking more annoyed than afraid. He watched her for a long moment before deciding she was harmless. He was wrong. A rogue wolf, one of the many outcasts who wandered beyond pack law, caught her scent before Damian could send her away. The attack came fast and violent, a blur of teeth and shadow breaking from the tree line. Damian moved to intervene, but he was not close enough. The rogue's claws caught Elena across the arm before Damian tore the creature away and ended the threat. Elena fell to her knees, clutching her wound, blood running warm between her fingers and dripping onto the frozen ground. What happened next changed everything. Every wolf within reach of her blood scent, the rogue's pack members hiding in the trees, Damian's own guards stationed nearby, even Damian himself, felt an overwhelming instinctive pull. Their knees buckled. Their heads lowered. It was not fear. It was not command through pain or dominance. It was submission, ancient and absolute, rising from somewhere deeper than thought. Damian had never felt anything like it in his life. He was the Alpha King. He knelt to no one. Yet for a single, disorienting moment, some part of him deep inside had bowed to a bleeding, frightened human woman he had never met. He forced himself upright, shaken and furious at his own reaction, and stared at Elena as though she were something impossible. "What are you?" he asked, his voice low and hard. "I don't know what you're talking about," Elena said, pressing a hand to her wound, her voice trembling but steady. "I just want to go home." Damian did not let her go home. He carried her, unconscious from blood loss, back to the stronghold, ignoring the protests of his advisors who warned him against bringing an outsider, worse, a human, into the heart of pack territory. He told himself it was only to understand what had happened. He told himself it had nothing to do with the strange, unfamiliar pull he still felt whenever he thought of her. Elena woke in an unfamiliar room, warm and quiet, with her wound cleaned and bandaged. She was furious to find herself somewhere she had not chosen to be, and even more furious when Damian explained, in blunt and unapologetic terms, that she was not leaving until they understood what she was. "I'm nothing," she said. "I'm a lab technician. I check blood samples for a living. I'm not special." "Then explain why every wolf who caught your scent tonight fell to their knees," Damian said. She could not explain it. Neither, at first, could he. Over the following days, Damian's most trusted healer and the pack's oldest historian examined Elena's blood against ancient records that few wolves still believed were true. What they found silenced the entire council. Elena was a descendant of the first bloodline, the mythical origin of all werewolves, a lineage believed extinguished centuries ago, in wars fought long before written history. According to the old texts, The first bloodline carried the power to command any wolf, regardless of pack, rank, or loyalty, simply through the truth of their blood. It was not a power gained through strength or violence. It was inherited, absolute, and, until now, thought to be nothing more than legend. Damien read the old records twice before he allowed himself to believe them. If they were true, the woman resting in his stronghold held power that could end every war among wolves, or, if it fell into the wrong hands, could enslave every werewolf alive under a single ruthless will. News like that did not stay contained for long. Within a week, Elena's existence had become the worst-kept secret in the supernatural world. Rival alphas, wolves who had never accepted Damien's rule, sent scouts to confirm the rumors. Old enemies who had been waiting for any excuse to challenge Blackwood's dominance saw in Elena not a person, but an opportunity. Whoever controlled her blood could, in theory, control every pack that had ever existed. Damien's own council was divided. Some urged him to use her power to finally crush the last resistance against his rule, to end the fighting, once and for all by force rather than diplomacy. Others warned that doing so would make him no better than the tyrants he had spent years fighting to remove. Damien found himself caught between duty and something he could not yet name. He had expected to feel nothing for the human woman his instincts had betrayed him into kneeling for. Instead, he found himself watching her more closely than he intended, noticing the quiet strength in the way she refused to be intimidated by wolves twice her size, the sharp intelligence in her questions, the stubborn dignity she carried, even while trapped in a world she had never asked to be part of. Elena, for her part, resented every moment of her situation. She had not asked for power. She had not asked to be hunted. She hated being looked at like a weapon instead of a person, hated the way council members spoke about her blood, as though she were not standing in the room. "I am not a tool," she told Damien one night, her voice sharp with exhaustion and anger. "I don't care what my blood can do. I am not something to be used." Damien, who had spent his life believing that strength alone determined worth, found himself agreeing with her more than he expected to. "You're right," he said quietly. "You're not a weapon. I won't treat you like one." It was a small promise, but it marked the beginning of something neither of them had planned for. Over the following weeks, an uneasy alliance slowly grew into trust. Damien assigned guards not to control Elena, but to protect her from the growing number of threats gathering beyond Blackwood's borders. He began asking her opinion during council meetings, valuing her perspective as an outsider unclouded by pack politics. Elena, in turn, began to see past the cold, commanding king everyone else feared, glimpsing instead a man carrying the exhausting weight of holding fragile peace together with nothing but sheer will. They argued often, both too stubborn to easily agree, but their arguments slowly softened into something warmer. Late nights spent studying old texts about her bloodline turned into quiet conversations about things that had nothing to do with wolves or power at all. Elena found herself trusting him. Damien found himself, for the first time in years, wanting to protect someone, not because duty demanded it, but because he had chosen to. Neither said the word love aloud. Neither needed to. It was there in the way Damien stood closer to her than necessary during council meetings, the way Elena no longer flinched when his hand brushed hers, the way both of them found excuses to be near each other, even when there was no reason to be. But peace never lasts long when power is at stake. The rival alphas grew tired of waiting. A coalition of the most ambitious and ruthless among them, led by an alpha named Victor Kane, gathered their forces and marched on Blackwood territory, determined to seize Elena by force and claim her bloodline's power for themselves. The attack came at night, sudden and overwhelming. Wolves clashed at the borders of Blackwood territory, the sound of the fighting echoing through the stronghold. Damien fought at the front lines, refusing to retreat even as the numbers against him grew. Elena, watching from the safety of the stronghold, felt something inside her break at the thought of losing him, of losing everything they had built, simply because of what ran in her veins. She made a choice that no one, not even Damien, expected. She walked out to the battlefield herself. The fighting stopped as her presence rippled through the chaos, wolves on both sides feeling the same undeniable pull that had first brought Damien to his knees weeks earlier. Elena stood at the center of the battlefield, her voice steady, despite the fear pounding in her chest. "Stop," she said, and the word carried a weight far beyond its size. "This war ends now." One by one, wolves from both sides lowered their heads, the ancient pull of her bloodline overriding even their fiercest loyalties. Victor Kane, furious and disbelieving, refused to yield, lunging toward her in one final attempt to claim her power by force. Damien moved without hesitation, placing himself between Elena and the attack, ending the threat before it could reach her. In the silence that followed, Elena looked out at the gathered wolves, packs who had been enemies for generations, now kneeling side by side. "My blood was never meant for conquest," she said, her voice steady and clear. "It was meant to bring you together, not to make you slaves to anyone's ambition, including mine." The wolves, moved by the truth in her words, and by what they had just witnessed, chose peace, not out of fear, but out of respect for what she represented. In the days that followed, Damien stood before the united packs and made a declaration that shocked even his closest advisors. He named Elena not a weapon, not a prize to be protected or controlled, but his equal and his mate. He spoke of her not as the human he had once dismissed, but as the woman whose courage had ended a war his strength alone never could have stopped. Together, they rewrote the ancient pack laws, ensuring that no bloodline, human or wolf, would ever again be hunted or exploited for the power it carried. Elena, once dismissed as nothing more than an ordinary human, became a symbol of unity among packs that had spent centuries divided by fear and pride. Elena Marsh never forgot the life she had left behind, the quiet hospital shifts, and the empty apartment she once called home. But standing beside Damien, surrounded by a peace they had built together, she understood that her life had not been ordinary at all. It had simply been waiting for the moment she would discover who she truly was, and the strength she never knew she carried within her own blood.